And we are live. What is up, everyone? We missed you. I know it's only been a week, but we missed you. Trust me. I am James Lynch. He is JHK. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Fantasy Fanatics MMA podcast. If you guys are unfamiliar with the show, basically we preview an upcoming notable fight. And on today's edition, we're going to be talking about the Khamzat Chimaev and Jingliang Li fight coming up very soon. But before we dig into the fight, make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. More importantly, download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. There's no UFC this weekend, but there is a lot going on. You can get your picks in. You can go head to head with us. I think I forgot to put my picks in last week. That's okay. I'm learning. I got to make a note of it for next week, and we'll get those in for sure. But make sure you do that. Best app on the planet when it comes to MMA, especially with picking fights. They're up to date. The stats are good, and that's what we'll be referencing a lot here today on the program. But before we get into it, JHK, how you doing, buddy? It's been a while.
Yeah, it is. It has been a while. Seems like 3 years that we spoke last, but it's only been 2 weeks. You know what I mean? Sometimes this world of MMA moves so fast that when you stop doing something or take a break from something, it seems so long, man, when you come back. But a week makes a huge difference. I'm pretty sure you're recharged and ready to go.
I'm always recharged and ready to go. Let's get into this fight, man. This is awesome. This is going to be taking place in Abu Dhabi as part of the UFC 267 card, this Khamzat Chimaev and Jingliang Li fight. I'll be honest, when this was announced, I was a little bit surprised, only with the fact that, you know, it seemed like based off the previous matchmaking with Khamzat Chimaev that they wanted to give him someone highly ranked and notable and move him up the ranks, so to speak. And you know, we always start this with how we got here. Well, here's how we got here. I think they are a little bit concerned about this COVID thing with Khamzat Chimaev. Of course, you're supposed to fight Leon Edwards like 3 times. The most recent time was because of a positive COVID test. So they're giving him someone a little bit ranked lower. If you compare the two, right? Leon Edwards, I think, was ranked number 3 at the time when they were booked. Jingliang Li ranked a lot lower, but a little bit surprised about the matchmaking. But I also get it at the same time where maybe they want to give Khamzat someone ranked a little bit lower, just in case the COVID thing is still an issue. But we'll see, sort of what happens there. But I'm just happy to see this guy fight, John. This was the definitely the fighter of the year last year in terms of taking the world by storm. I'm not saying fighter of the year, but, you know, fighter of the year in terms of, you know, someone who made a mark. You know, I think 2019 was Jorge Masvidal's year. 2020 was Khamzat Chimaev's year in terms of popularity and notoriety here. But I love the style matchup. We'll get into that in a sec as well. But, two guys that are going to stand and trade, and it's not going to be a fight that you're going to have to worry about, you know, someone laying on top of the other person. So just your thoughts on how we got here and how the matchup has come together.
Yeah, this matchup was a surprise. You know what I mean? A lot of people thought that Khamzat, since he was scheduled to fight Leon Edwards and he was ranked number 3, that they would give him somebody in that top 5 in his return, right? But like you said, the circumstances changed everything. And it's actually a perfect fight for Khamzat because Lee, he's ranked number 11, which is not too high in the rankings, but just good enough. And stylistically, I think a lot of people on paper are looking at this as a matchup for Khamzat to come back and show his talents against a guy that brings solid fights. I think Lee has like 5 performance bonuses, so they're expecting fireworks. And you know what's unique about this fight? Even though Khamzat is Khamzat and Lee is Lee, and they both bring great aspects to the fight, this fight's on the prelims, and I think this is the first fight we ever previewed that's on the prelims or not even a co-main event, right?
It is. I do wonder. I mean, there's a couple things about this card that are a little bit strange that we might as well get into. This is not a pay-per-view, although in Canada it is. I don't know if you know this, but we have to actually pay for this card. So Canadians getting screwed over again. Thanks, Dana White. But no, I think part of it, the reason why it wasn't a pay-per-view, at least my theory on this, is because it's in Abu Dhabi. It's going to be on earlier. I think if you did a pay-per-view that's earlier in the day, the sales might suffer. So I think for the American audience, they're like, hey, we'll just make this one on ESPN. But as far as it being on the prelims, I do wonder if it's a timing thing as well. Maybe they want this earlier as sort of a palette to the the pay-per-view or whatever, maybe to sort of get people going. And plus, I think they're also expecting a finish in this fight. And what usually happens when you get a highlight reel finish, they put it on the pay-per-view. So I think the UFC's trying to maximize Khamzat Chimaev by putting him on the prelims as opposed to the pay-per-view. I think if this was a traditional pay-per-view, Khamzat Chimaev would be on the pay-per-view, but we'll see what they sort of decide there. But anyways, happy to see this fight come together. A lot of interesting tidbits, and we might as well get into it now. So let's start first with Khamzat Chimaev, undefeated, 9-0, comes to us from Sweden. He's training at All Stars Gym, although did do a bit of training at Extreme Couture as well. He's 27 years old. He's 6 feet 2 inches tall with a 75-inch reach. So not like an incredibly big welterweight if you think about it. Like, I know he competes in both weight classes, middleweight and welterweight, but there we go, 6'2" with a 75-inch reach. Compare that to Jingliang Li, who is 33 years old, 6 feet tall with a 72-inch reach. So not a huge size discrepancy here. I mean, we're talking 3 inches in terms of reach and 2 inches in terms of height. Like it's barely been anything. So I don't think when these two square off, you're going to see a huge size difference, so to speak. I know that's something that some people were talking about because of the fact that Chimaev competes in a higher weight class. Now, Chimaev has not competed since he knocked out Gerald Meerschaert, and that's a while ago, John. I mean, it's we're talking back in September of 2020. So when he steps in the cage, it'll be more than a year that he last competed. And like I mentioned, he's had 3 canceled fights with Leon Edwards. We might as well go into why those didn't take place. First, it was Edwards testing positive for COVID-19 back in December, which canceled their December fight. Then it was Chimaev still recovering from COVID-19 and getting COVID-19 himself in January. And then they were supposed to fight again in March. And then it was Chimaev who still had lingering effects of COVID-19, so much to the point, John, that people, well, I don't think people forgot this, but Chimaev retired briefly, right? He said, I'm done. This is too much. I don't think I can compete anymore. Obviously, I'm sure that Dana White was on line one and being like, "Hold on a second here, man. You just had a huge year for us. Let's get the best medical experts here and figure it out." So it seems like he's recovered from COVID. I don't think he'd be taking this fight if he wasn't medically cleared. So yeah, a lot of momentum last year for Chimaev, but a lot of momentum halted. Although saying that, John, I mean, I'm looking at the numbers. I already released a pros pick on this fight. The numbers are still great, so there still is a lot of interest in Khamzat Chimaev and what he's able to accomplish here in terms of the matchup, but. 3 wins in the UFC. One thing we got to obviously point out about this, and it's a talking point for sure, is that no wins over ranked opponents. Now, I will give him credit. The Meerschaert win actually is looking a little bit better considering what Meerschaert's done over the last couple of fights. Reese McKee's not with the UFC anymore. They cut him. And John Phillips, I think he's still on the roster, but he's very much in danger of getting cut here as well. Outside of that, he fought in Brave CF, had a couple nice wins over a bunch of undefeated fighters, including one guy I know he fought that's pretty familiar, that I'm familiar with on the regional scene, was Sidney Wheeler, and he knocked him out in 35 seconds. Sidney Wheeler also fought Brendan Allen and Gerald Meerschaert on the regional scene as well. And then as an amateur, he just had 1 fight. So this is a case in we see a lot with fighters where, is how good is Khamzat Chimaev? We really don't know because of the level of competition he's fought. We had this situation a few weeks back with Giga Chikadze fighting Edson Barbosa. Chikadze proving a lot of doubters wrong and getting an impressive win over Edson Barbosa. So the same thing could be here as he's facing Jingliang Li. So just your thoughts on Khamzat Chimaev, John, and what he brings to the table.
Yeah, Khamzat, man, I heard his name while he was fighting for Brave, but there's so many guys that are so similar to Khamzat in that promotion that I didn't really pay too much attention to it. Like you mentioned, Sidney Wheeler, a guy that was like really, like anticipated, right, coming up in Brave, and then Khamzat took him out in 35 seconds. So it shows you that Khamzat is very skilled, man. He's undefeated. He has all finishes, I believe. And let's just look at his body of work in the UFC, right? He beat John Phillips at middleweight. And John Phillips, if you rate him in the middleweight division, where would you put him? Probably way in the back, right? Like he's got
to be like if we're being honest here, and I hope John Phillips isn't watching this. Seems like a nice guy. He'd be very, very, very. He'd be probably one of the worst in the division if we're looking at it that way. Honestly, like I think a lot of middleweights would beat him.
So you look at that win. It's a great way to enter the UFC. A weight class up, get a good finish. You get 2 rounds in. The next fight, it was Reese McKee. McKee is actually a lightweight that moved up to welterweight. And that fight was crazy because Khamzat just went in there and mauled him. I don't even think, he didn't land even 1 strike, McKee. And Khamzat just ripped through him like it was, bread and butter, right? And then the Gerald Meerschaert fight, it's 1-punch knockout, man. Like, what can you say about that? And Gerald Meerschaert, when we watched his last fight, he took a couple of shots. He got knocked down, but he weathered the storm and came back and got the submission over. I believe the dude that he beat, what was it, Muradov? He was undefeated, right? In his career.
He was, I think, he might actually. I think you're right that he was undefeated. Either way, he was a huge underdog in the fight. No, Muradov had 6 losses, but still, in the UFC, he was undefeated. He was undefeated in the UFC.
He was hyped. He was hyped.
Yeah, absolutely.
6 losses. What is wrong with me? But he had,
don't have Tapology in front
he was highly like like a lot of people had a lot of hope for that guy, and Jared went in there and choked him out. So when I look at that fight against Jared, I'm thinking like, what if Jared didn't get caught with that punch? I wonder how that fight would have played out, right? And that's something that everybody can wonder, but it's never going to happen again. But the thing is, those fights happen in a span of, I believe, 2 months, right? And then he didn't fight since then, which to me, I'm not a really big hype train guy. And I know that Khamzat is very skilled and he has knockout power and he can wrestle and he could grapple and all that stuff. But I'm not so convinced yet on this hype. I'm just telling you right now, I'm not a hype guy. Just like, Paddy Pimblett. Am I on the hype train with Paddy Pimblett? No, he has one fight in the UFC and he almost got knocked out in that fight. So it's like, I'm not on that train yet, but I have a lot of respect for Khamzat because that dude, he is a bona fide killer.
Let's take a look at Jingliang Li. I think it's a case of two fighters in sort of opposite directions in the sense that you mentioned there, Khamzat Chimaev, a lot of hype. I see a lot of people using the FC word, future champion already with this guy. And I feel like Jingliang Li's kind of the opposite. I feel like he's a guy that's had a pretty good record in the UFC. He's had a couple losses, but overall he's been pretty solid in terms of his debut. Like, we forget he made his debut against David Mashad, UFC 173 back in May of 2014. Like, this guy's been in the UFC for a while, and he's got a couple losses, but I mean, for the most part, they've been close, right? Like, so if you look at sort of the overall record, this is a guy where we don't really know how good he is, so to speak, in terms of, where he's at in his MMA career, right? Because here's the key thing, and I'll just get this out of the way right now. Jingliang Li has 0 losses by knockout. So that's what makes this kind of interesting here. Pretty durable guy. Not that he's fought a lot of guys with a ton of knockout power, but still, I do find that interesting. He has been submitted. Kata Nakamura submitted him back in 2015, but you kind of get what I'm saying here in the sense that this is a guy that is, for the most part, has been pretty durable in the UFC and is not a guy that just, has gotten destroyed in any of his fights. His losses have all been by decision except for the Nakamura fight. And even then, that was a 3rd round submission loss. But let's go through the career here of Jingliang Li. Got the split decision win over David Mashad, lost to Nordine Taleb by split decision. I actually went back and looked at that fight, and I saw 2 media members scored the fight for Jingliang Li. You know who one of the media members was? Well, you won't know because obviously that's why I'm bringing this up. But CJ Tuttle, who's actually the PR guy for Bellator now when he used to work for Sherdog, he actually scored the fight for Jingliang Li, which is kind of interesting there. Had a knockout win over Diego Lima as well. I made a ton of money on that fight actually because Diego Lima was getting. I remember seeing him in I think the fight before that, and he nearly got finished. So I bet the round 1 prop in that fight, and Jingliang Li ended up knocking him out in the first round. So I made a lot of money on that. Just saying. And then outside of that, he's got wins over Bobby Nash, Frank Camacho, Zach Otto. He absolutely destroyed Zach Otto in that fight. Lost to Jake Matthews. And then picked up some good wins over Zawada, Zaleski. That Neil Magny fight was pretty close last year that we actually, I don't think we watched that together, but that was a pretty close fight in general, that one. And then just coming off a knockout win over Ponzinibbio, which I know Ponzinibbio had a huge layoff coming into that fight, but still that was an impressive victory there to finish a guy like Ponzinibbio in the very first round. Like, to me, that's the best win he's had in his career is Ponzinibbio. So here's a guy that, hasn't been super flashy in his career, but does have a couple interesting wins. And his losses, I mean, even Magny and Jake Matthews, those are guys that are still middling welterweight fighters. So it'll be quite interesting to see how he performs in this fight. But I think one of the key things, like I mentioned there, is that he hasn't been knocked out before. So, if Chimaev's not able to finish this guy, what's the fight going to look like in the 3rd or 4th round, or 3rd round, I should say? It's not a 5-round fight, but it's going to be very interesting in this one. We'll talk just your thoughts on Jingliang Li. And also, was there anything in the interview when you spoke to him that sort of stood out to you, John?
Well, in the interview, you could go check that out over at SCMP MMA. The one thing that stood out to me was that he took a pretty good break after the last fight and kind of just relaxed and kind of took in his family and went back to the countryside and all of that. And then when he was ready to train, like fully train for a training camp, he went to the PI in Shanghai. So he has this huge team at the PI just working day in, day out for Chimaev. And he's really confident, man. Like Lee, he's a confident guy, but this time around, he's telling me that he feels like he is the best he's ever been. And he's been in the UFC for a long time, man. He's fought a lot of good guys and he's beaten a lot of good guys. And he told me he feels like he's the best right now. And this is going to be the test. This is going to be the barometer right here, Khamzat Chimaev, because Chimaev has a lot of hype and Lee wants that. That's a reason that Lee took this fight, is because he wants to take that hype. He wants to take those fans. He wants to take that position in the rankings. And I think even if, like, let's say he does win and he is in the rankings, I think he jumps up in the rankings by beating Khamzat. This
Absolutely
is how I feel, right? But going back to like Lee and his career in the UFC, 2014 made his debut. That is wild to me, man. Because I think a lot of people, when he first came into the UFC, they didn't expect him to last this long. I'm just telling you the truth right now. I think a lot of people count him out in many of these fights, even though some of the fights he was the favorite. But then when he's not the favorite, he just comes through. It just seems like he fights to the potential of his opponents. And we've seen that in his last 3 fights. The one versus Zaleski, Like Zaleski was ranked at that time when he fought him, and he knocked him out in the 3rd round. That was a very competitive fight, and Lee looked really good. The Neil Magny fight was weird to me because Lee engaged the grappling and the clinch with Magny, and Magny's like beautiful in those spots, right? So it was weird. Like, why did he fight Magny where Magny shines? And then Magny just took over that fight, right? Took him down, but Lee still got back up. But still, Lee was engaging in the takedowns and the clinch against the fence. It was just weird. And Magny wins the fights like that. No matter who it is, he'll win those fights. And the Ponzinibbio, he was very confident because I remember talking to him before that fight too. And he said he's just going to go in there and take this dude's head off. And that's what he did. And he said the same thing about this fight coming up. I'm going to take this dude's head off like I've been doing. And man, I'm excited for this fight. I can't wait to see it.
Neither can I. Let's get to our picks. Right now, the odds, do we have them up on the screen? I'm seeing most books having him as about a 3. Yeah, there you go. Minus 345. So actually the line, the public's been hammering the line. I think he opened closer to minus 250. So I'm about to sneeze here. So I think that's actually a fair line. I figured the line would be a bit higher, to be honest, just with Chimaev and his hype. But I think a lot of that is the COVID stuff. A lot of that is the fact he's going down to welterweight and fighting a welterweight as well. One thing I want to just sort of mention before we get into our pick here is sort of the pressure in this fight. You talked about it there. Lee really has nothing to lose here. He's lost before. It's not a big deal. He's not a household name like Chimaev is at this point. So if he loses, he'll live to see another day. It's not a big deal. With Chimaev loses, there's a lot of hype taken away. But he does have that safety blanket of the fact that he can go back up to 185. I think it was very strategic of him to come into the weight class and say, look, I want to fight. Like, I almost think he would have been better just staying at middleweight. And then if he ever lost there, he could move back down because he would have more advantages being the bigger guy. So it is a bit weird. I know there's linked to a fight with Luke Rockhold. I'm not sure who turned that down. I can't remember which fighter did. But, I mean, I think that's a fight where with his power, he could potentially beat Rockhold. But that's a story for another day. So, yeah, a lot of pressure on Chimaev as well. We'll see how he handles it. Going from, like I said, Reese McKee or Mershard or any of those guys to Jingliang Li is a much different animal here. With that said, though, I got to pick Khamzat Chimaev only because of the fact that this guy is very fast. He's got good grappling. He's got good stand-up. He does have sort of those it factors, but it's been against competition. I mean, other than Mershard, I mean, I like Gerald. He's a good guy and, big win a couple weeks ago and stuff. So that's maybe the one win where you could say, okay, but even then Ian Heinisch knocked out Gerald Mershard. What's Ian Heinisch been up to since then, right? So it's one of those things where, you can look at the competition, but also, it doesn't give us too much sort of leeway here. I think Chimaev's going to win, but I don't think it's going to be the type of performance that we've seen from him before, where it's like a quick finish or like an impressive win or anything like that. I think he just edges this one out just slightly. I do worry about the COVID stuff. I do worry about the layoff. I do worry about a lot of things in this fight, but I do think Chimaev wins. If you think Jingliang Li is going to win this fight, here's my advice to you. Bet the fight the day before, because you know what? This line's going to get hammered. I'm telling you right now, he's going to probably end up being, if I had to guess, closer to like minus 400 come fight time, maybe even higher, because people love this guy. I just see it in the comments. Like, I even posted a clip yesterday, which triggered all these Chimaev fans about Kevin Lee saying that Chimaev's not a destroyer. That's all he said. He didn't say he was a bad fighter. He actually said he was a good fighter. He just says, I don't think he's this destroyer that everyone makes out to me. Everyone got sensitive, trash Kevin Lee. What the hell are you talking about? All this stuff. You can just see the fan reaction that people believe this guy's a champion already. And I'm not there yet. Same thing with Giga Chikadze. The Barbosa fight, now that he won that, I'm a believer now, but prior to that I wasn't. Getting a lot of Johnny Walker vibes from this fight, like I kind of said with Giga Chikadze. Now I could be wrong here. Chimaev could go up there and win in the first round, and I could be completely proven wrong here, but I think this is a good test for him. It's not the best test he could have. If he was fighting like a Wonder Boy or like Leon Edwards or something, it would be a different story, but I think it would be closer. But I think Chimaev wins, but I don't think it'll be as impressive as people think. But I got to pick him here. Am I going to bet minus 330 on the fight? Absolutely not. I might look at the inside the distance prop. That might be something to take a look at if you are on the Chimaev side. But I think for the most part, I'm going to stay away and just sit back and enjoy this. And I will say this, if the line does get crazy, like if it does go up the way I think it does, I'll throw a bit on Lee. Why not? I think he's got a puncher's chance or a fighter's chance, so to speak. So I'm going Chimaev in this fight. Who are you taking?
Before I make my pick, I want to just rub some salt on the wounds of your picks, because Giga Chikadze, I picked him. And he took out Barboza.
You did.
Brunson, I picked him. He took out Till. And if you go watch the video of our breakdown, I tell you exactly what happened in the fight.
You're right.
I told you
I will
he
give
was
you
going to
credit.
take him down and he was going to choke him out. And that's what he did. He took him down and choked him out. A lot of people in the comments were saying like, oh, Brunson has no ground skills. He has no submissions. I guess he has submissions now, right? So
yeah, I'll give you your credit. Yeah.
Yeah, with that, you know what I mean? I'm going to take Lee in this fight. Number
Okay,
one
there we
reason
go.
I'm taking Lee is because, he's an Asian brother. So we got to go with the Asian brothers. Number two, I love the guy. The guy is great. You know what I mean? He's a great. I wish he spoke English, because I think if he spoke English, he would be a much more popular fighter than he is now, because he has a great personality. We just don't get to see it because he speaks Chinese. And,
Is that something you asked him in the interview? I know it's not like a pleasant conversation, but is that something you kind of been like, is that something you're looking to do? Because some fighters, like, here, I'll give you a quick example, not to interrupt your thing here. I'm going to be interviewing Marina Rodriguez. She was like, oh, I'm really nervous to do the interview. I don't speak English. I said, here's what I'll do. I'll send you the questions ahead of time. You can read them. You can translate them. We'll go in that order, and then it'll be easy for you. If a fighter takes that approach to interviews, they're going to be able to learn English a lot better. That's what I'm saying. And it'd be vice versa. If I'm having to go speak Portuguese somewhere, I'd probably do the same thing. So that's kind of, that's my
Yeah, it's your job, you know what I mean? So if it's
Yeah.
your job and the market is in the US and that's the biggest market, I think it's probably going to be productive for you to learn English somewhat, you know what I mean? Like, look at Habib, JDS, there's so many. But anyways, with Lee, I feel like he's going to be able to draw Khamzat into the striking. And that's where Lee, he loves that chaos. He loves being able to just stand and bang with these guys. And Lee has a chin, so he's going to be able to take the punches of Khamzat. And a lot of red flags with Khamzat. Number one, he's going to be making that weight cut to 170, and he was affected by COVID tremendously. And if you look at a lot of the guys, high-level guys that were affected by COVID, they didn't perform very well after being sick. And it seems like Khamzat was the sickest out of everybody. Like, he had the most long-lasting effects. A big example of that was also Cody Garbrandt when he came back and fought Rob Font. He got pieced up by Rob Font, right? He didn't really look like the same Cody Garbrandt. I feel like that might happen to Khamzat. I'm taking that chance and seeing Lee come in there and just have the performance of his career, right? Long as he stays off the floor. But even if he takes him down, Khamzat might burn himself out because of the long-lasting effects of COVID. We don't know when that stuff is going to kick in again, right? It could kick in the middle of the first round. We have no idea. You know what I mean? So I'm taking the chance and taking Lee, and I'm taking him by third round finish. I think he's going to finish him in the third round, probably end up knocking him out. He's going to be tired. He's gassed. And that's what I see, you know what I mean? And I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, you just hating on Khamzat. I'm not hating on Khamzat. Khamzat,
no, that's people who don't. Fighter. Yeah, that's, listen.
I'm just giving you my pick and what I think is going to happen in the fight. That's just me, telling you.
If you're backing up an argument with facts, which is what you've been doing, because a lot of people, like, this word hating gets sort of thrown out so much. It's sensitive fans who are saying you're hating on someone when you're not. It's like that guy who says that I hate Giga Chikadze. I didn't hate him. I explained my reasoning for why I thought Barbosa was going to win. And I was proven wrong, but it's going to happen. So yeah, you're not hating. Just want to be clear.
Yeah,
about
that word hate, it's so like the word scared with fighters.
Exactly.
Like, come on.
Same sort of thing.
Come on.
Yeah. No, I agree there. Okay, well, I like it. So again, let's just recap. You picked Chikadze, you picked Brunson. I feel like you've had a couple other underdog picks as well recently.
Yeah,
but,
I've just been going with the underdog stuff, you know what I mean? So like, I didn't pick Volkanovski, and I know he's the favorite, but he's also coming off COVID, so I'm kind of rethinking that right now. But anyways, in this fight, I pick Lee. I think Lee's going to go in there and have a hell of a performance. And yeah, man, and prove that PI is worth all the money that they spend.
Yeah, we will see about that. Okay, so I'm going Chimaev. He's going Lee. We'll revisit this when the fight comes up. It's going to be coming up. I mean, I know we say it is a bit of ways away, but at the same time, October 30th. I mean, that's like next month, right? So exactly. That's right around the corner, right before Halloween. So we'll see what happens there. All right, let's get to the Q&A. Thanks patiently, everyone, for being patient. Again, a quick reminder: hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. We're always looking to grow this channel, and make sure you download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app, where you can go toe to toe with us with your picks. Let's start with Antoine. Good to hear from you, Antoine. He's always in my chats. Always a big supporter of all the work I do. He says, amazing breakdown, guys. Since we're discussing welterweights today, did you see Burns call out Magny, and Magny accepted the call out? Who do you guys have in that? Number 2 versus number 8. Big fight for Neil Magny. I have Gilbert Burns in that fight as my early pick. I don't think it happens.
Yeah, I don't think it happens. I think
here's the thing with Neil Magny, including Khamzat Chimaev. He also accepted a fight against Khamzat Chimaev. That never happened. Now, granted, that's back when Khamzat was with his other manager, so I don't know if that, things can change now in terms of, some of the fights that he's getting. But no, I think Burns has a lot of advantages there. Burns is in this weird spot, and I've talked about this before, because like people are like, oh, we should fight Leon Edwards. Well, then if he beats Leon, then what happens? Wouldn't that give him a title shot? But you can't give him a title shot because he just lost this year. So Burns is in this weird spot. Like, I like the out of the box thinking. I know he just wants to fight, but I think that matchmaking actually makes a bit of sense in terms of just keeping Burns active. Like, who else is he going to fight at this point? Does he fight Chiesa? Chiesa just lost. Doesn't make sense there. At least Magny's coming off a win. There's very few welterweights that are coming off wins that would make sense. So I'm all in favor of that matchup if both guys want to keep active. And hey, guess what? If Magny somehow pulls it off, then he's, immediately shot up the rankings too. So I don't have an issue with that fight, but I would have to pick Gilbert Burns in that fight.
Yeah, I think Gilbert Burns shines where Magny is strong.
Yeah.
Except for maybe the clinch, but once it gets to the ground, dude, like I don't know many guys that could beat Gilbert Burns on the ground in MMA or in just the grappling world. So I would have to take Burns in that fight. I have a theory about Chiesa and his last fight with Luque. I feel like they had a plan for him, win or lose. I feel like if he would have won that fight, he would have been fighting Burns. But since he lost, he's fighting Brady. I feel like that was already set out. Like, a lot of guys, behind the scenes, I've heard some things, since we talk to like fighters, coaches, managers and stuff. I hear a lot of guys already have fights lined up. You just don't know about them. And it all depends on the result of that next fight, right? So
I think they have to with COVID, right? Like they gotta think like one step ahead, two steps ahead. Hey, this is something we can get into it later. Contender Series, they sent 5 guys again last night, and they did the same thing the week before. But I think that's because I was thinking about it. I mean, obviously they want to cut they get someone on the cheap that you can bring in the UFC that's grateful for the opportunity when you can cut like a Jimmy Rivera or someone like that instead. But also I was thinking with COVID, because it's still a thing, I think they want to have guys on the roster that are ready to go as opposed to signing someone new and they haven't seen them yet. And I think even for the fans, it's better because then it's like, oh yeah, I remember him from a Contender Series, as opposed to some guy they brought in. It's like, maybe you missed that LFA card or CFFC card that they were on in there. They're fighting there. So I think that's another reason why they're signing so many fighters. But I got to say this. Congrats to Chad and Helliger. I've called 3 of his fights, GHK. It's so cool to see him in the UFC for a guy that whose fights I've called. And, he deserved it. He was like a plus 300 underdog. And for him to come through last night was amazing. So good for him. Anyways, we can talk about that later. Antoine also says another matchup I'm curious about is Ally Quinta versus Bobby Green. So on paper, Ally Quinta is the better fighter. I've heard some stories, man. I'm actually going to be talking again to Merab Dvalishvili today. When I talked to Merab like 3 or 4 months ago, he was like almost saying like Al might have to retire because of his injuries. And then I see him get this fight booked. I know he's healthy and ready to go, but I don't know if that Ally Quinta exists anymore with the amount of injuries. I'm picking Bobby Green in that fight just because of activity. Yeah. Al hasn't fought in forever. And again, when you have this many injuries at his age, it's got to take a toll here. And as far as I knew when they announced that fight, I don't think either fighter had actually signed the contract yet. It was one of those kind of UFC bullying situations with like, look, the fight's announced, you better take it. Otherwise, whatever. So I'm taking Green in that fight.
Yeah, I'm taking Green in that fight too. We have no idea where Al is at in his health, in his training. We have no idea, right? So, your trading partners can say what they say, but you don't know what's really going on behind the scenes. And yeah, that's the funniest scenario of them all right there is Ally Quinta doesn't even know he have a fight booked on a pay-per-view, and he finds out, or everybody else finds out, and then he gets 50,000 messages congratulating him or saying like, why'd you sign that fight? But is he fighting? Like, I don't know. Like,
no, he is. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he is now. Yeah, they figured it out. But that's still very weird.
Well, I'm taking Bobby Green. I don't care what the line is. I think the line will probably be in favor of Al, just because of his resume. But Bobby Green, man, it's hard to finish that guy, and he never goes away. You've seen him in the Rafael Fiziev fight. That fight, if it was 5 rounds, it could have got pretty interesting at the end. So we'll see what Al can do against him.
Roman, good to hear from you, buddy. By the way, I did put out another message to Rakic's manager. The guy's ghosting me. He's not getting back to me. So I'm trying to get Rakic. It just hasn't happened. So I'll continue to work my magic and try and get that done. He says, I'm putting my money on Volkan against Ankalaev. Can he beat him? I believe he can beat him. I just think Ankalaev is one of those guys that does have kind of that it factor where you're kind of like, maybe this guy could be a contender. So, and I haven't felt that way about Volkan at all. Volkan's a guy who's lost so many fights on his own. Remember, he was beating Anthony Smith. He lost. There's a couple other fights he lost, where I think he just sort of gave it away here. So what are we getting with Volkan right now? He got knocked out a couple fights ago. Didn't Latifi knock him out? I feel like.
No, I think he finished Latifi.
Oh yeah, he finished Latifi, but I feel like there was a fight he got finished. Oh, it was Yuri. Yuri finished him. That's right. Mind you, that's Yuri though. Yeah. Yeah, that's the last fight he had, which was back in July of last year. Yeah, he did knock out Latifi, and that made his move up to heavyweight. I don't think he beat Rakic. That was a close fight. Anyways, to answer your question, I do think he can win, and depending on what the line is, you might consider it, but I would pick Ankalaev in that fight, just personally.
When you look at Volkan's last fight and the style that Ankalaev brings, it's kind of like that wild winging, powerful shot type striking that Ankalaev brings. So it's not very similar to Prohaska, but there's some similarities there. The speed advantage, especially. Vulcan, man, it's hit or miss with him nowadays, right? It's just like, what's going on? You know what I mean? Has he just hit the plateau or not? Can he still improve or not? Is it COVID affected him more than he, reveals to us? We don't know, but we'll find out in this fight, right? Man, it's hard to pick this one. I feel like this is a toss up, dude. Like
it is. The other thing I'll say that's hurt Volkan is that he hasn't been in Florida training there because of visa issues, right? So he's been back home. You're not getting the best training. He's just not. I mean, Sanford's, it's stacked right now. So there we go. J-Spec Driver, good morning. Good morning to you as well. Huge supporter of the show. Can't thank you enough, man. We see all the tweets and all that. If you're ever in Vegas, I'm assuming that's probably the place we'd probably end up meeting. I will buy you a beer one of these days. With like a lot of people here that support the show. I think that's probably the most likely thing. We got to get you out to Vegas. I think that's the way we could probably meet at some point, is if you somehow come out to Vegas one of these times. You got to go and see a fight.
Or Canada. Maybe they'll have a card in Canada.
We'll see. Yeah, it'd be nice. I know Toronto's probably due for a card, so I'd probably go out there. I got family out there. I'm actually going to Toronto for the holidays, so there you go. Lucas in the chat says, do you see Paddy Pimblett becoming a genuine contender at lightweight? John sort of already answered that. I'll sort of piggyback off that. No, not yet. He almost got finished in that fight against a guy in Luigi Vendramini who I think he'll stick around, but is kind of on that cusp of being cut. Paddy did do something in that fight where you kind of feel like, okay, there's something here beyond just him being an average fighter. I mean, the speed that he had to knock out Vendramini was very impressive. But the striking defense is a big thing. You don't want him turning into Luke Rockhold, right? Luke Rockhold's a tremendous fighter, a very talented fighter, but he has some really bad striking defense or just has been hit a lot, and that's not what you want to see from Paddy Pimblett. And let's not forget either, he had some bumps in the road on the regional scene as well. Julian Erosa, that was a fight that was extremely close. I actually talked to Julian about that the other day, and I said, hey, did you see Paddy? Because we were on the same card, which I think people forget, this past weekend. And Julian's like, now that I look back, I shouldn't have never taken that fight. The matchmaker is also his manager, and they sort of knew what they were doing, and the judges and all that. And I have to go back and watch the fight. I remember it being a close fight, but I think there's some work to be done with Paddy Pimblett. But I think at the same time, I think it's great to see what he's doing. He's a good personality. He's exciting. He's got a unique look. Daniel Cormier said he looks like Owen Hart. I like all that. I think that's all positive, but I'm not ready to call him a contender just yet. I think there's potential there, but he's got to work on some things. But he's young enough, John, where I think he can do it, right? I think there's possibility.
Yeah, of course, man. Look at him. He's already popular. So all he got to do is go in there and win the fights, right? But he's the type of guy that, you want to see him against someone that could, dump him on his back a few times and see how he reacts to that, especially that
handle adversity.
Yeah, handle adversity. He handled adversity with the knockdown. It's just, can he handle the grind? Someone just grinding on him for 10, 15 minutes. Can he handle that? If he can handle that, then I'll be more convinced. But Paddy's gonna get good matchups. He's gonna get the Sean O'Malley treatment. I guarantee that's what's gonna happen.
And they should because look, you have a guy here who's obviously garnered a lot of fan interest. You don't want to throw him to the wolves, but you also don't want to do a Michael Venom Page type build up like Bellator's done with him either. So you got to kind of find something in the middle there. So we'll see what his next fight is.
Well, it's gonna happen like this. He's gonna end up being like Chase Hooper, or he's gonna end up being like Sean O'Malley. And then once you get to that point, he's gonna either go down or up. We'll see what happens.
Well, I'll just say right now, I don't think Hooper is just, unfortunately, just had very little experience coming into the UFC. At least Paddy fought in Cage Warriors and had some decent competition throughout the time. But anyways, that's a conversation for another day. Let's get to Noah. He says, crazy that Khamzat has only absorbed one significant strike in his first UFC fights. I love the fact that he can end it with his hands at any second, but it's also very well versed with the submission game. We'll see if that Khamzat exists anymore. Again, COVID affects everyone differently. It might not affect him at all. It might affect him a lot. I mean, I know even Jack Hermanson, remember he talked about having a slow start against Edmund Shabazian. That was because of COVID, he said. So we'll see how he looks. But it's definitely an exciting fight, and that's why we decided to preview it today. Roman, I've been getting people are like obsessed with this fight. It's not just in here, but a lot of people have been messaging me on the Patreon and all that. This I always pronounce his name wrong. It's Duplessis and Muniz. Good fight. I like Duplessis in the fight, and I think he's going to be a favorite in that one as well. That would be my early pick. We probably won't preview that fight on here, but I will preview that when the fight comes up on my show. So.
Man, this one is a toss up to me too. You know why? Because Muniz, that dude's a killer too, man. He just nobody really knows him yet. Duplessis, he kind of had his little coming out party in his last fight, I believe. But dude has thunder in his hands, man. But Muniz can take you to the ground and wrap that neck up. He snapped Jacare's arm. Yeah. So if he's able to snap Jacare's arm, then he's gonna be able to go in there and snap Duplessis' arm too. So it's a toss up, man. But that fight, is like one of those fight of the night type fights, I think.
Roman says, who do you guys have if Khamzat and Shavkat were to fight at UFC 267? I mean, I pick Khamzat in that fight. Look, I get the hype behind Shavkat as well. Obviously very impressive, not as popular as Khamzat Chimaev, but I mean, they're both good. Hopefully we don't see that fight until it's for a title. That would be my
Shavkat. I think you have to see what Khamzat does against Li to decide like what that fight, the outcome of that fight. But with what we've seen so far, Shavkat 17-0 with 17 finishes too, man. That's pretty damn impressive. But I don't know. I think I'd have to take Shavkat in that one.
Let's go to 10th Realm. Always good to hear from you, man. John watched Shang-Chi. Great representation of Asian culture and martial arts. Huge win. I haven't seen it yet. I'll probably go see it. I've mentioned this before. My wife's half Chinese, and my mother-in-law's Chinese as well. So it's always, it's part of like our family where we like to, kind of check out stuff like that. So I'll probably check. I don't know if I'll go to the theater and see it, but we'll definitely be checking it out at some point.
I don't watch Marvel. I don't watch DC.
Me neither.
Watch superhero movies because they're all the same to me, but just for the Asian culture, I will go watch this movie. And I like the lead actor. You know what I mean? He's pretty good. Kim's Convenience, man. That's like a very good show. The
Canadian show.
Yeah, Canadian show, right? He was the Chinese guy playing a Korean guy, which is to me is like funny to me.
Kind of screwed up. Yeah. I didn't know he was on King. I didn't know he was on Kim's Convenience.
He was the son. Yeah, he was the son on the convenience store. But yeah. Anyways, I'm gonna go watch it. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it, and I've only heard good things about it, and I will decide on my own. I don't really like to have people
have to have the hype sort of influence
opinion because it's an Asian thing. I've shitted on other Asian things, so.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong here. The reason this is such a big deal is because this is the first male Asian lead or just lead period in a Marvel movie, correct? Is that why it's such a big deal?
Yeah, like
I know some people are saying it's because he's a lead, but then it's like, what about all the Bruce Lee movies? But I guess it's because this is a Marvel, so it's like on a bigger stage.
And I think it's a comic book, superhero movie, and on top of that, it's an all Asian cast. That's
cool.
Say,
okay,
right?
Yeah, that's good. See, yeah, that's awesome. I'm all about that as far as representation and all that. So that's kind of neat. Yeah, I'm with you. I've not watched a single Marvel movie, and it's not because I don't like it. It's just I don't have time. I rarely watch movies, and in fact, the movies I do watch are older movies that I watched as a kid. So I'm a little lame that way. So what are you gonna do? Actually, I was watching. What was I watching the other night? 48 Hours. Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte. I just like seeing stuff from the 90s because that was like my childhood, right? So
you know what I was watching the other night? House Party.
Oh, great movie. Great movie.
It is a good one. It's funny. It's good.
Yeah. I love all like anyways, we could go on a whole podcast on this, but the references are my favorite part. What's good, Euro? We already answered your other question here about Duplessis. 10th Realm, there will be crazy striking between Riddell and Fiziev. Did you see the tweet by Daniel Rubenstein, by the way? Did you see that about this fight? About how, I guess a couple of years ago, he's like, they'll never fight each other because they used to train together, and now they are. And then Rubenstein kind of made fun of himself. So I thought that was good. At least he was kind of, talking
the manager, he's bringing up old stuff. And I think it's great. And I think this is a great matchup. And man, it's something that a lot of people were like, oh, they're never going to fight each other. They trained with each other. But man, it just shows you that these guys are the best in the world, and they want the same exact thing, which is the championship belt. So to get there, you got to fight each other. So they're going to fight each other. And they were teammates, but I figured like they're not that close because they're going to fight each other now rather than wait for the title, right? So we'll see. We'll see some violence.
Fiziev doesn't strike me as a guy that's like, oh, I got to worry about our friendship. Like he's just like, let me fight. It's all good.
I think he has that same mentality as like Valentina. They're both from the same country, so yeah.
Euro says seems like a setup fight for Khamzat. Oh, couldn't disagree more. I think if they wanted a setup fight for Khamzat at welterweight, who's someone that's like on the verge of being cut, like Lee's not that guy. Lee's still like a decent guy. He's ranked. I think if someone comes to mind here,
they could give him like so many guys at welterweight, right? So many. There's a long list of guys that they could have gave him. Like for example, let's say,
okay, here's an example because they just announced the fight. Jordan Williams is fighting Ian Gary, the Cage Warriors guy. That's a setup fight.
Oh, okay.
I think they saw Jordan Williams in the last fight. They're like, what do we got here? I mean, he's the guy who hasn't had a single UFC win yet. And I like Jordan, but I just, I do think that that's a fight I think is a setup.
That could backfire though. It
could,
big time.
Well, Williams has so much more to fight for than Ian Gary does. Ian Gary's got all this hype and stuff. So there you go. 10th Realm. Do you guys believe what Jigga said that he had the choke and didn't go for it?
Huh?
There's a whole thing. I think in an interview, I can't remember who it was with. He was either Damon Martin or Mike Bond. Or no, it wasn't Mike Bond. I forget someone. They're talking about Giga Chikadze apparently said he had a choke on Edson Barbosa, but didn't go for it because he wanted to get the knockout. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's said like in fights. I don't know. I can't. I think if you have an opportunity to finish a fight, you finish a fight. I don't think there was like, oh, he eased up, because then what happens if it backfires and you lose? Then you're going to regret it. So exactly. I don't necessarily believe that. No.
Yeah, that's hard to believe, man, because if you have a finish locked in, why would you let go of the finish to go for another finish? I don't know. That's kind of an odd decision making. And it maybe opens up a can of worms for Giga that he's not very good at making decisions in the cage. We don't know, right? It could backfire him in the future. We'll have to see.
He's also the same guy who thought Marvin Vettori beat Adesanya. So
exactly.
What else do we got? Okay. Who does Khamzat fight next if he wins against Lee? SRO is answering that. I hope I'm saying that right. Good question. I think, you know who I think he fights? Stephen Wonderboy Thompson.
Or Vicente Luque.
I think that's a more dangerous fight for him, though, Luque than Wonderboy.
It is, but I could see Luque fighting him, because Luque is down to fight Nate Diaz. I think Luque is down to fight either someone above him or somebody that has hype.
It's gonna be someone. But see, the reason I think the Wonderboy thing makes sense. Wonderboy's ranked right around that same spot, and then also like he just got dominated in his last fight. I think the UFC might see that as an opening and say, okay, we'll give you Wonderboy, and Wonderboy is a bigger name than Luque. That's why I think that might make more sense. But I guess they could go that route as well.
Yeah, I could see Wonderboy getting that fight too. It's just like, does Wonderboy want to fight him though?
Yeah,
that's another question.
Well, he might have to. What options do you have when you've lost a fight like that? Charles, Dustin predictions, who wins and how. We will preview that at the time coming, but you guys know me. I'm sticking with my rule. Until he loses, I'm always going to pick Charles Oliveira. So that's all I got to say on that. We'll let John keep you in suspense when we actually break down that fight.
Oh, yeah.
Is Furio the next huge prospect who will challenge Valentina? We'll see. Who's she fighting? She's got who's she fighting? Manon Furio, I think that's how you say it. She's fighting Bueno Silva. We'll see. I mean, she looked great in her last two fights, both standing TKOs. I think it's possible, yes, but we'll see. We'll see how she looks in her next fight. We got to see.
It's hard to say, man. She's so far away from even the top 15 right now. So it's just, how do you know if she's going to be a huge prospect coming up? I mean, I look at her, and I look at her and like Casey O'Neill, and I still look at Miranda Maverick as a big prospect coming up in that division. So like, could I put her in with them? Yeah, I think so. I think she's one of the rising people, but not like a person that's close to challenging Valentina though.
Roman, if they put Paddy in against Dober next time, that would be a huge mistake. Yeah, they're not going to give him Drew Dober. God. Dober would beat him, I think. Dober's way more well-rounded. And let's not forget, it took till the third round for Islam to finish Dober, right? So Dober's not like a vet. He's a good vet. He's still a solid guy in that division. So I wouldn't look at past there as well. Let's get to Chris. He says, James, some people who comment on your channel go nuts about Khamzat. It's crazy how hyped up he is after very little octagon time. Yeah, I see it every day. Trust me. You're a hater, whatever. I got someone accusing me yesterday on my channel of hating on fighters. It's not. I'm giving people a glimpse of what certain fighters think of other fighters. And even then, they're just criticizing them, which is not the same as hating. If the fighter comes out and says, Colby is a prime example. Colby comes out and says, this guy sucks, whatever. Okay, that's Colby. But if someone's saying, I don't think this guy's as hyped up as he should be, or even Anthony Smith made a mild critique of Rakic saying, hey, look, I don't think this guy goes in there to fight. I think he goes in there to win fights, meaning that, he's not going in there to kind of be aggressive and finish. That's just a critique. We got to live in a society where we don't need to be sensitive about everything. And if someone has an opinion, let them have their opinion. But people freak out about this stuff because this sport, like a lot of sports, is very tribal. It's like you're either with us or against us. And if you're against us, we're going to let you hear about it. And it's like, guys, we got to not spend so much time dying on these types of hills. It's crazy. So yeah, I see it all the time on my channel. Euro, if Yorazino starches Blaydes, where does Blaydes go from there? Good question. Interviewed Blaydes yesterday, got a follow-up with them. So you can check that out on Middle Easy. Yeah, it would be a big setback for him. I think it's a possibility. I do. I think Blaydes has got to be careful in this fight. Yorazino, we saw him what he did to Sakai in his last fight. We've seen some of the knockouts he's had, including Blaydes' teammate, Alistair Overeem. Blaydes got to be really careful in this fight. And I think he's also got to not worry so much about what the crowd's thinking about, if it's boring or not. He's just got to win, right? Because guess what? When you get knocked out, their fans aren't paying you the extra money you would get for that win bonus, right? So he's got to be very strategic. Saying that though, on paper, Blaydes should win. He's got the better wrestling. He's got better wins, in my opinion. He's, a taller guy. Actually, might not be taller, but he's a big dude. So I think, if Jairzinho wins, then Blaydes is in a weird spot. But something I found out in my interview yesterday, Blaydes has a new contract. He got 4 new fights, even after losing to Derek Lewis. So good on him.
Wow. Well, that puts
says
the
it right
kibosh
there.
on anything I ever was thinking about Blaydes, because I was thinking if Blaydes leaves, seemed like he wasn't really happy, but I guess he's happy now because he's got a new contract, probably a lot more dollars, right? Yeah, a lot more money. So Blaydes, I think the key to that fight is that Blaydes just keeps going forward. I think that's the key, because once you start sliding to the side and sliding backwards, that's when Jairzinho kind of gets in his rhythm and starts chasing after you. And I don't see Blaydes like counter with a punch and knocking out Jairzinho. You know what I mean? I feel like Blaydes has to put his face in his chest and keep doing that for 15 minutes. And I think he could get the win that way. But Jairzinho can knock you out at any moment, though. That's the fun part about that fight, is like Blaydes can ride you for 15 minutes, but Jairzinho just needs that one split second to put you out. So we'll see what happens, man. Because Blaydes, do you think that there's going to be any like residual effects of him getting uppercut and start?
Oh, there has to be. I mean, I think he's taking the right amount of time off to get back in there. So we'll see. Because that's the first time. This is something I got to clear up as well. Ngannou knocked him out, but he didn't knock him out cold. Lewis did. So that's the first time Blaydes has been knocked out cold. He's been finished, but at least he was able to get up. With the Lewis knockout, that was way worse. So just a little context there. Noah, excited to hopefully attend my first live UFC event and see one of my friends fight on the Colby Usman card. Hopefully it stays in New York City. Who's your friend that's on the card? I'm curious about that. It should be good. I'm still stuck here in Canada, which is fine, with everything that's going on right now. Although now they're making us get vaccine like cards, and just to go online to get the card, it takes like 40 minutes. Like you have to like wait in line just to get your card. So I got to do that later today when I'm doing something else, I guess. But so I don't know. Hopefully we're getting in one step closer to doing events. But it should be good. My only recommendation, if you've never seen a UFC before, is like you're more there for the atmosphere. You're not there to like. It's not actually a great viewing experience because of the cage. You'll find yourself looking at the monitor, especially when they go in the corners. So just keep that in mind. It's more about being there for the atmosphere, not having the commentary, hearing the when like someone gets knocked out or whatever. So that's more what you're there for. So that's cool. Antoine, who do you guys have in the Chiesa versus Brady fight that could really push Sean to the top, and it would suck for Michael being number 7, losing number 13? That's an iffy one, man. I think Brady can win that fight. I do. I think he's got a little bit of that it factor. You saw, was it Jake Matthews' last fight where he just went out there and pretty much dominated him the whole fight. Now, Chiesa's a big welterweight. That's always going to be an issue for anyone that fights him. But I think with Brady and what he's been able to sort of accomplish, and you look at that team in general, right? Petrosky, the tough guy, he got a win as well. Pat Sabatini got a win over Jamal Emmers. That team's on a roll right now. I think there's a lot to be said for that. So I'll look at that one a little bit closer coming up. But I think Brady can absolutely win that fight. I'm not going to give a pick though right now.
I think they play on the ground the whole fight, and that's what's going to make this fight fun. But I do see Brady just having a little edge in some aspects of the ground and standing. You got to think Brady's a little bit better striker than Chiesa. Do you think so?
Yeah, I think so.
Right. So so I don't know. I think they're gonna go wrestling heavy in that fight. But as the early pick, I pick Brady.
Quickly before we get to the next question, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. This is normally in the show where we do our underdog picks, but there's no fights going on this weekend, so we'll do that next week. Maybe we'll do 2 next week or something, just to give you guys some extra content. 10th realm, if Colby wins, will they do the trilogy? Good question. I think it depends how the fight goes. If it's a close fight and Colby edges it out, sure. If Colby gets like a quick finish, and which I doubt will happen, I mean that the odds on that would be crazy, but then that's another possibility. But if I don't know. I think if Colby dominates the fight for some reason, I don't know if they do that right away. I think they might set up Masvidal, to be honest, or something. I don't know. I mean, I guess Masvidal's coming off a loss, but you get what I'm saying. I think they'll look at sort of bigger fights there. So we'll see. I think it's a possibility for sure. But again, it's going to depend on how the fight goes.
I see them doing a trilogy no matter what if Colby wins. I don't know. I just think that Usman's he's been so dominant at the top.
Yeah, that they couldn't do it. Which I wouldn't have a problem with how he's looked in his last couple fights.
But Colby's always prepared, win or lose, to do something, right? And if he wins that fight, I'm guaranteeing you he's gonna call out somebody for the next title shot, and he's gonna put the hand in the face to Usman, right? That's what he wants to do. So yeah, I could see Colby, if he wins, he could possibly fight Holloway. You know, the UFC, they don't care if you lost; they'll give you a title shot.
Yeah, look at you, all Romero. SRO, do you think Anthony Smith breaks his losing streak against Ryan Spann? Smith's actually won 2 in a row. He beat Devin Clark and Crute technically in his last fight. So there we go. As Noah pointed out, good job, Noah. Euro Prime JDS or Prime Lesnar? That's a great question. Yeah, because they were supposed to fight on the Vancouver card, right? Because that was the tough finale. Yeah. And they ended up going with Rich Franklin and Chuck Liddell, which I have that poster on my wall here. Or no, it wasn't. No, that was Shane Carwin and JDS. My bad. Yeah. I was getting that mixed up. But no, what was I going to say? I don't know. I mean, JDS is the better fighter on paper, but Lesnar was like a force to be reckoned with his size and strength. And maybe that also wasn't the USADA era either. So I'll go JDS.
I don't even think we saw a prime Lesnar. I don't think we saw that fighter. I thought we saw
because of his diverticulitis or whatever he had, the digestion issue. It's true. Yeah.
Talk about an ailment destroying your career. You know, I mean, that's what happened to Lesnar. And so if we're thinking prime, I take JDS too, because we didn't even get to see the prime Lesnar.
Jack Shore is 4-0 inside the UFC, 15-0 overall. Why is he not ranked? Because he hasn't had a ranked win. I think that's probably why. Yeah, it's. I'm with you. Look, Jack Shore's an amazing. Apparently, had a torn bicep in that last fight or something. He still won, so he's great. He's another guy that it just shows you how deep bantamweight is. He's not ranked and he's undefeated, and it just goes to show you, like, where he is in that division. So there you go. Noah says, my buddy is Alexa Kamor, and what do you think about his next fight? Who's Alexa fighting? I know Alexa quite well because he. I
saw something, that he's fighting.
Who's he fighting? He's got to get back on the track, the winning track there. 2 in a row now. Who's he fighting? Yeah, I don't see Tapology doesn't have it listed here, but no, I saw it. So funny story. I interviewed Alexa before he was in the UFC, and I think it was for his Contender Series fight. And then I saw him at the New York card. I just randomly bumped into him and we started talking. Yeah, he's a really, really great guy. And he switched management. He was with Jim Walter. I don't know what's happening with his management group, but a lot of those fighters left. He's with Iridium now. So good dude. Young guy too. So there's still a lot of room for improvement there. Euro, does the Cuban Missile Chrysler have another fight? Yes, he's fighting. I believe he's fighting Jordan Wright, which Lucas pointed out in the chat as well. Should be an interesting matchup there. Euro, as impressive as Usman has been, I still have Woodley higher on my welterweight GOAT list. Well, how many title defenses did Woodley have? He had what? He beat Lawler, he beat Wonderboy. Well, he draw with Wonderboy, beat Wonderboy, and then he beat Till. I think Usman's has more wins. It's a coin flip. I think at this point, when it comes to the GOAT, it's to me, it's about title defenses, and I think they're about even right now, or maybe Usman's passed him now, but it's still, I don't know. It's apples and oranges. It's apples and apples at this point, basically.
But also, like, the way that Usman has been winning, I think that makes a big difference.
It does, but you got to look at, he's fought Masvidal twice in that span. I think Woodley, if you look at the style matchup, he would have beat a Masvidal like that back then. At least with Woodley, he beat, mind you could say that about Till, but he only fought Till once. Like, he beat Wonderboy twice, draw Wonderboy, beat Wonderboy the second time. Some people thought he didn't win. This is what I'm talking about. It's so, like, you could dissect this and argue either way. So I don't think one matters to the other.
You could compare Wonderboy to Masvidal, and of course you would rank Wonderboy higher in skill and everything over Masvidal. So if you look at the wins over Thompson would be a much better win compared to Masvidal, right? So yeah, I see what you're saying. So we could sit here and just kind of like pinpoint.
It's like Holloway and Aldo. Who's the greatest featherweight? Everyone says Holloway because he beat Aldo, but Aldo also had how many title defenses, and Holloway had way less. So it's like, where do you stand on that? I'm about title defenses. That's why I put, like, for example, George St. Pierre ahead of a lot of other people, because he was the champion for years. Nobody was beating him. And I look at longevity there, and that's another argument with the Habib thing. Anyways, that's, again, a podcast for another day. I saw Marcel's report. He's fighting John Allen. Who's John Allen? John Allen. Who's
the Brazilian?
Who's fighting John Allen? I don't know who that is.
I guess he's talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis.
No, I thought Marquez was fighting Jordan Wright, unless that fight got scrapped. Let me just do a quick check. I actually talked to Julian the other day. Some people know this, some don't. I actually edit Julian's podcast. Yeah, he's still fighting Jordan Wright. So I don't know, unless it's Jordan Wright's out of the fight. I'm not sure. SRO, what are Chandler's chances of beating Gaethje? I think it's a 50-50 fight. I really do. I think Chandler and Gaethje are kind of like the same type of fighter. I think you could argue that Gaethje's fought better guys, but even then, Chandler's been more active than Gaethje has. Gaethje hasn't fought since the Khabib fight. There's so many factors going into that one. 50-50 fight. I give a slight edge to Gaethje. We'll break that fight down in the coming weeks. But yeah, that's a 50-50 fight.
Yeah, we'll definitely break that down. I see Chandler having the speed advantage and Gaethje carrying a little bit more power than Chandler.
Noah's saying Alexa versus John Allen is the fight. Okay, gotcha. I thought you meant Julian Marquez. So yeah, okay. Well, that's an interesting matchup. What is next for Leon Edwards? Good question. Still trying to get an interview with him. I'd like. He should be doing some media right now and getting his name out there a bit. That's one thing. Like, you know, but Grant, you know, I'll shout out to Paradigm. They're one of the best management people to work with. If I'm being honest here, they're great for that. Yeah, I think what's next is the Luque rematch. I've said this before because, and here's my reasoning. Okay, hear me out for a second here. I can already see JHK getting a little, kind of. Disagreeing here with me, but here's my reasoning. You can't do Burns because, like I mentioned, if Burns wins, then what does he do? If Luque fights Edwards, it's a rematch. Edwards beat him. Luque got a big win in his last fight over Chiesa. It keeps Edwards active. Edwards can't just wait on the sidelines for this Colby and Usman fight because he had too many gaps in between fights, and it sucks what happened to him against Nate Diaz. I'm of the side that he beat Nate Diaz. Who cares what happened in the 5th round? But I think the Luque fight makes sense because it's a chance for Luque to avenge a loss. Luque's looked more impressive in his last couple fights. He's getting finishes. He just finished Chiesa, which is very impressive. He finished Woodley before that. Do the rematch, put it on the New York card, and let's get these guys fighting. And then if Luque wins, it's a fresh matchup for Usman. If Edwards wins, then you can finally say, okay, forget about Nate Diaz. He deserves the title shot. That's the fight to make, in my opinion.
With Edwards, the worst thing he can do is sit around like he's been doing. Mm-hmm. That's the worst. He needs to find the best matchup with the least amount of risk. And that's what he should be looking for right now, just to get another win racked up. Because what is he on, like a 9-fight win streak right now? Yeah. If he's on 10-fight win streak and his next fight is against a ranked guy, maybe a top 5 guy, let's say Thompson, let's say Luque, then that you can't argue against him getting the next shot, right? It's just like he has to get the next shot. Doesn't matter what Usman did, in a few years back. So, and that's why I respect Burns, because Burns is just out there trying to find fights, man, because he knows that he needs to rack up wins to get a title shot. That's the only way. And sitting around is not going to do anything for you, because the UFC doesn't like people that just sit around. Right? Unless they really like you, right? But that's not the case for Edwards. That's not the case for a lot of the guys in that welterweight division. So you got to continue winning, continue fighting. And that's what Luque is doing. And that's what Burns is doing. And they're pretty much like best friends, right? They just won't fight each other. So Edwards, what does he need to do? Like you said, he needs to go around there, do some media to get his name out there, get people writing articles on him, a little clickbait stuff, and then find his best fight, which is Luque or Thompson, and get a win. Come on. It's so simple.
We're going to do 2 more questions as I got to dart out of here a little bit early. I got an interview at the top of the hour, but Euro says Valentina or Thug Rose. I'd pick Valentina just because she's bigger, but they'll never fight each other. They used to train together. Valentina pretty much squashed that when I spoke to her. Rose doesn't do any interviews, so I wouldn't be able to get her sort of take on that. She just doesn't. That's one thing. That's I'm not going to throw any shade at her management group, but they're just very hard to get fighters to interview. Their top fighters. Again, if you have management, interviews should be part of it. And I know fighters don't like doing media, but you got to do some, because it's like, unfortunately, this isn't like the NFL or other sports where everyone recognizes you. You need to get your name out there. So I've never understood that logic of making it difficult for the media to interview fighters. It should be open field. But there you go. And last question we'll get to: if Rockhold loses to Strickland, what is next for him? Rockhold's still a former champ. That's always going to hold some clout in the division. I think you could do, you could potentially do him and Weidman if he ever comes back, or there's all types of fights at middleweight that would be fun. Imagine Kevin Holland and Rockhold. Like, there's all types of possibilities there. So I think Rockhold will be fine, but I don't know, man. He's taken a lot of damage. He's been off for a while. He's taken a lot, punishment in his career. I think this is a really important fight for him, and I think Strickland likely wins that. But we'll sort of take a look at that when it comes, because I think Rockhold's better on paper. It's just the damage and the layoff is concerning, whereas Strickland looks at the top of his game right now. So
it's wild to me, because when I first started watching Luke Rockhold, when he was the champion for Strikeforce, he was known for the guy to be able to outpoint other guys and not take that much damage. But now, fast forward like years, and he's taken too much damage, and a lot of people don't even want him to come out of retirement. But no matter what, anybody in that top 15 would fight Luke Rockhold. I think so. Why would you not? He's a former champ. Like, he has so many fights. Like, there's so many guys that would fight Luke Rockhold. Like Luke Rockhold is not going to have a hard time. Like he said, he's having a hard time, but I don't believe so. He just kind of picky and choosy of who he wants to fight. But yeah, if he beats Strickland, that makes him a top 10 fighter, which is a hell of a, advancement for him looking at what he just did in his last 3 fights. So, I like it.
And keep this short and sweet. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. Tune into the Parting Shot podcast at 4 p.m. Eastern time today. Myself and Adam Martin are back. If you're a Patreon member, you can watch it. If you're not a Patreon member, sign up. Less than a cup of coffee. It's really good for your value. That's the Uncensored podcast where we talk about everything from stuff behind the scenes in the media to everything else. If not, check me out tomorrow on my Q&A on my second channel, youtube.com/LynchMMA. I got a bunch of interviews coming out. You follow me on Twitter. You can see all that. John, I'll give you the last word. What's up?
I'm taking a couple weeks break, so I'm not going to be doing really any interviews, but you could just find me on JHK MMA. That's it. I'll see you guys next week.
For myself, for JHK, for producer Michael, for making this happen, thank you so much for watching. We'll be back here a week today previewing an upcoming notable fight, and enjoy the weekend off.